Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
We're hanging in there, still battling COVID and everything else that's going on in the world, but we're hanging in there.
Yes.
May I ask you to please tell us your name?
I am Demarcus Howard.
Okay, and would you share a little bit about yourself?
Of course. So a little bit about me is I was in the Army for 8 years. And after I left the Army, I decided that, well, while in the Army, I decided I wanted to teach. So I decided I was going to transition out of the Army and start teaching. Because while I was in the Army, we used to do a lot of tutoring and volunteer service with a lot of schools. So that was one of the things that pushed me to teach. So I went to Georgia State, got a degree in middle grades education. I'm certified to teach grades 4 through 8 in math and science. And this is technically my first year of teaching.
Wow. Do you love it?
It has been a very interesting year. So when it started off in the program, I was excited to be in the classroom with the students. And so now where I'm currently at, we have a hybrid model. So some students are in the classroom, some students are at home online. And personally in my classes, the maximum amount of kids I have in my classes is 5. So the majority of my students are online.
So you
And
teach both of them at the same time, your hybrid and your
so we teach both. So we're on Zoom with the students online while the students are in the classroom in front of me as well. So I have all my students on Zoom at one time. So teaching that way. And I teach math. So I'm teaching 7th grade math. So it's been a very interesting, it's been hard at times. It's been a struggle at times trying to figure out technology, trying to teach the children how to use technology while I'm still learning how to use technology as well, while also trying to teach them math and make sure they understand what I am teaching. So it's been very interesting so far.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, my throat was a little scratchy. So tell me, so how does this work in a COVID pandemic? So what's been the challenges of that?
So one of the hugest challenges is attendance. So I can have you come 1 week and then you'll go missing for a month and then trying to communicate with parents. Sometimes the numbers aren't working that we have in the system. Having to reach out to the counselor. The counselor has probably 40 other emails that they're trying to get in contact with parents. I have students who I've never seen before that's on my rolls, and we've reached out several times. Teaching math. Math is something that a lot of students say that they don't like, or they don't understand why we're doing this. And one thing I try to pride myself on is try to bring real world into the classroom. It's really hard with them online, not even know if they're paying attention. Sometimes I can see the game that you're playing in the background while I'm teaching math. So those are the struggles, trying to keep them engaged. Engagement is like the biggest part, keeping them engaged and want to do this, especially by the end of the day. My last class, they've been sitting on Zoom for 8 hours at this point, 7 hours. So they don't want to hear me talk no more. They're ready to get off the computer.
Right. So how do you manage that? First of all, what's the metric to tell you whether you're successful, and what's the metric to determine whether the kids are successful?
So for me, success is moving. As long as you're gaining. So starting off at a 20 and you're at a 35, you're gaining some knowledge from me. And also for me, it's making connections. If I made that connection with you, you feel comfortable talking to me. It doesn't even have to be about the lesson. If I made a connection with you, I'm doing my job, because it's not all about what scores that you have or any of those things. I need to be able to connect with you, especially during these time frames that are really hard on the students.
Yeah. And so first, let me ask about you. Do you feel safe in the class? Do you feel safe in the model that you have?
So I do feel like that our administration does their absolute best to ensure our safety. Of course, you never know what was in the classroom with me. So do I feel 100% safe? No. But do I feel like the administration is doing their absolute best to ensure that we're safe inside of the building? I do believe so.
Absolutely. And so what are 7th graders like? I mean, how old are they? 15? How old are 7th graders? 14?
They're 12 to 13.
12 to 13. Thank you. Let's see how old I am. Okay. But anyway, so what are they like at 12, 13? Are they, do they listen to you? They follow your instructions? Are they, complying with when you say keep your mask on or whatever it is that you're doing? How does that work?
Oh, so they are extremely compliant. They do have their days. They have their days just like anybody else. They coming up. I don't really have an issue with masks or like the COVID protocols, like hand sanitizer. They have plexiglass shields that they carry with them everywhere. I don't have those issues. It's just some days it's like I'm over it. It's like I'm not doing it, and it's like How do I connect with you to get you to do the little work like ask you to do? Okay, we'll take a break. So they're extremely compliant. They are moody. They're going through changes, so they're very moody. One minute they'll be all with me on which side, let's do this. And then I go walk past you playing your game on the computer. It's like, I thought you was with me. So
yeah, I understand that. So can you explain to us what classroom management is? I've talked to several teachers about this. I'd like to hear how you define classroom management, especially in COVID.
Yeah, so I don't really use the management phrase of it. I like to just have a classroom facilitation portion of it because manage seems like we're in a business type oriented thing. And in the classroom, they are pretty much running the classroom. So I'm the facilitator in that classroom. So I'm going to give you some instructions. I'm going to let you struggle through things. I'm going to assist you through those things. And at the beginning of the year, we come up with a classroom charter. So this is any rules that I impose upon you. You came up with this charter. And at the end of the day, you have to hold yourself to what you came up with. I didn't come up with this for you. So if you break the charter, it's something that you broke and the promise that you made to the classroom. Because in my classroom, we don't use my classroom. It's our classroom. In our classroom, we're going to do this or we're going to do this. So that's how I really deal with with classroom behaviors and things along those lines. We refer back to our classroom charter each and every morning. Like, what's our charter? Before we start class, remember that we're a team, that we work together, that no one is dumb, no one is anything else. We don't call each other names. We work together and that we're going to make it through this. So that's how I deal with that portion of it.
Excellent. So what made you decide to, and I know you said when you were in the military, you were doing a lot of tutoring, but what made you decide to stay? I mean, because a lot of people find that teaching doesn't pay as well. It's not always as proactive as other careers are, and there's always something to comply with either from the state or the federal government. So what made you stay?
So to be honest, this is my first full year in the classroom alone. So I did a year of student teaching in Georgia and I moved here to Texas. So it's my first year and it's really been like, and if we're honest, it's things that cross my mind all the time, like, is this really what you want to do? Like, this is a lot. And even in COVID, is so big on high stakes testing. And I'm like, we are in the midst of a pandemic. You have students that are online, but only thing that we're worried about right now is high stakes testing. We want to test. And what about the students? Like they're burnt out at this point of the school year and we're not even halfway done yet, to be honest. So it's a struggle, but I like what I do. I honestly love it. When I walk into the classroom and the kids are excited to see me, or when I missed the day of work the other day and they were highly upset with me that I didn't come and I did not tell them I wasn't coming. And so those things bring me joy. And also me being able to bring their lived experiences into the math classroom is something that they don't really see. They tell me they don't see in any other classes. They be like, they don't really talk to us about anything else. Or when we make word problems they have nothing to do with anything they've ever seen. I use the word in the word, well, they use the word in the word problem of their pantry. And the kids had no clue what a pantry was. Right. But that's because we're not using the language that they're used to. We're not bringing their lived experiences into the classroom.
That's beautiful. And that's actually powerful. So tell me, what does the diversity look like in your classroom and in your school as a whole?
And when you say diversity, can you...
ethnicity, gender, okay. Sexual orientation. I don't know if that's the case in middle school. I
don't really know about too much of the sexual orientation, but so it's predominantly Hispanic, and then after Hispanic is African American. So I would say I think it's like 87% Hispanic, and then the rest are African American students. Gender, there are more males than there are females in the school, and also the same way in my classroom. So that's the diversity that I have inside the classroom. My largest class is like 26 students. So out of those 26 students in the largest class, I would say about 17 to 18 of them are females.
So what does the staff and administration makeup look like? Is that the same too, or is it equally as diverse as you just described for underrepresented groups?
So our principal is Hispanic, and all of our assistant principals except for, so we have 5 assistant principals, and all of them are African American except for one. One of them is white.
Excellent, excellent. So do you hold true to the phrase that you can't always reach me if you don't look like me? I mean, like, how do you know? Because you were talking about lived experiences.
Mhm.
So, when you're in the classroom, do you find, and I guess, being this is your first year and, but in general, even your own experiences, do you find that you are more comfortable and more open to learning if the people that are around you look like you, or does that not matter?
I definitely believe that plays a role in it. I also believe that if you don't do your research, so if I don't look like you, but if I do my research into what's really going on in your community and bring that into the classroom, because if you don't and you start talking to me in a way that I'm not understanding or in a way that I may find offensive, it's something I never want to bring inside the classroom. So I think that it plays a huge part into not just looking like you, but at least knowing what that culture is to bring into it. Because most of my students are Hispanic. So in order for me to know, I ask my Hispanic friends, I'm like, okay, so what do I say here? How do I move about it? They say this. And I have to know these things because I would hate to ever offend anyone that's inside my classroom. And it's the same with me for learning. If I'm learning, I would want to learn from people that look like me so that they can have that same connection.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anything else about the classroom or your classroom experience? I want to move on and talk about a couple other things, but is there anything else that we missed?
I don't think we missed anything.
Excellent. So, how did you decide to go into the military? What was the thing that drove you to the military? How did you get there?
So I come from a military family. My brother was in the Marines. My dad was in the Army. And so I never had the plans of going to the military. I was like, military is not for me. But in high school, I was in the JRTC program. It was really good. And then it was like, you should do this. They'll pay for school. It was just all the good things about it. And so I'm like, I could try this out and I can look into it. And so I looked into it. They had some really good benefits of it. I did apply for college. I got accepted into a few colleges. But I was like, I think that I want to take the route of military, see how this goes, go travel, and then if they're going to pay for school while I'm in it, I can go to school while I'm in. And that's how I ended up going to the military. I was like, I'm trying out to see how this works out, and it's a family thing.
Yeah, and so I bet your family are proud of you.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, why did you pick the Army versus the Marines or the Air Force or some of the other?
Well, so I can't swim, so I can go to the Marines. And so the Air Force, when I was going, I also did think about Air Force. They had a waiting list at the time, and I was ready to go ahead. Once I graduated high school, I was ready to go ahead and start. So I went ahead on and joined the Army.
Yeah. So what was that experience like as a whole? So you said you traveled to various places. Tell me what your experiences were from when the time you finished basic training to the time you departed. What was that experience like?
So from basic training was a complete shock. It was something that I just had never experienced ever before. But it instilled so much into me. I think it made me the person I am today. From there, my very first duty station was South Korea. So I left my mom and now I'm overseas in another country. And I was just like, this is complete culture shock. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know too much about South Korea, but it was one of the most amazing times in my life to be able to learn about the culture, about the food, to be able to travel around the country, make complete friends that I have friends for life now that I always still talk to. And then my job, we were chemical specialists. So my job was really cool. We got to learn about a lot of different chemicals, learn about decontamination, training. So I was really enjoying it. The only thing was that it was so high paced that portion of you could go to school while in the Army was like, it's a give or take there because you always training. So when do you have time to go to school? So that was I loved the Army altogether, but my reason for leaving was I wasn't able to get that whole school experience like I wanted.
How long were you in?
I was 4 years active duty and then 4 years in the reserves.
Okay. And what's the difference between active duty and reserves?
So active duty, you're like every day, Monday through Friday, you are there, you live on base. That is literally where you are. In the reserves, you go 1 weekend a month and then 2 weeks out of the summer. And so you're like a part-time, you show up 1 weekend a month, y'all train, make sure you stay fresh in your training. Then you do a 2-week summer training, probably in another state somewhere, and y'all train as a collective, like people from different states who come together and you train all together.
So is there, as a reserve, do you still travel all around the world? I mean, do you go, or are you now more in defense of the United States?
So in the reserves, you can. They offer you opportunities to leave and go to other countries. You can deploy just as an active duty soldier would deploy. It all depends on the mission of the unit. But you don't do as much traveling. Most of the time you're working your regular job, then that one weekend a month, and then 2 weeks out of summer, your job has to let you off in order to go do the drills and the training that they have.
So on January 6th, did you see what happened in Washington at the Capitol?
I did.
So when you saw that they were bringing in National Guard members to, protect for the inauguration and to kind of secure Washington, what was your thought about that as a former military man, and then even, with your reserve work?
So I know a few people in the National Guard. I've never been in the National Guard because National Guard is state run. But my feelings were I had mixed feelings. It's sad to see that they have to go and protect the Capitol, and that there are more people, more military forces in the Capitol than there are in active combat zones around the world. And so it was really shocking, but it was also, I felt scared for my brothers and sisters that are in the military, because like you never know what can happen, and they're trained to do this job. And so it was a really hard time to see that that's where the country is shifting to, and that's where you have to send people. And there were National Guard people from every state in the country in the Capitol. So it was really interesting. And in capitals around the country. Capitals around the country activated their National Guards for all the capitals.
Absolutely. So in the grand scheme of things, as you think about that, did it make you want to go back and engage your military career? Or were you kind of like, I'm glad I'm not there. I'm glad I'm not going to be a part of this? Because I guess we know that the National Guard are state run, but they do also have the president or anybody else can call them into service. So
deploy just as well. So when I think about it, during that time frame of that the president of that time frame, I was really excited I was not in the United States military at the time, because I would like to be able to speak freely about how I felt about things. And a lot of times you're not allowed to speak those political thoughts while you're serving the country, because you're just supposed to be neutral about a lot of things. So I was happy that I didn't have to deal with a lot of those things or be within and see those things that were going on. But also I felt as if, I feel sometimes that maybe I should have stayed in. I tell myself, and I talk to my friends, they're like, oh, you were good, you should have stayed in. And it's a tug there, because I really liked what I did in the Army. I really liked it.
Can you go back and pick up your career, or would you have to start anew?
I could, if I was to go back in, I could go back in. I don't know if I want to do that right now, but
you could.
do it all, but I could, yes.
Yeah, okay. And so one of the things that was interesting about the deployment of the National Guard and the insurrection in Washington was the thought that some of the fringe groups had infiltrated some of these things, some parts of the military, or the people had military training that they were now using against America, if you will. So did you think about that, or did you have any thoughts about what you saw and that transition? So, you've been serving your country and now you turn your back on your country, or people are infiltrating these groups and using skills that they've learned either through military or some other kind of training.
So yes, that's really interesting. I was talking to a friend earlier, and I was telling him, like, I really did it prior to like the last 4 or 5 years. I didn't believe a lot into like brainwashing people and things along those lines. But I told him this morning, I was like, it's really crazy to think that people see certain things or hear certain things, and they've been in the Army, or they've been in the FBI, or they're police officers or state representatives, and they believe things they've heard, and then they use those things and went in charged and broke in and started an insurrection against the United States Capitol. So I think that is very interesting. I think that that's something that needs to be looked into. Like, how do you go from being a patriot and loving your country to attacking one of the symbols of democracy here?
Yeah, Absolutely. I think we all kind of wondered that too, like, and especially being Black and brown people, this country hasn't always been good to us, but, and we have been patriotic. We serve, we do whatever we can, and to see that, a lot of the noise that's out there in some of the social circles, if that would have been a Black Lives Movement that went that way, the outcome may have been a little different.
Oh yes, I agree with you. One of the things that while we were saying, because I was at work, of course, during the time frame, and so I got alerts on my phone from different news organizations. But one of the history teachers that I know in the building was like, she texted me, "Are you seeing this?" And I was like, "Seeing what?" And she was like, "You should just pause class for a second and look at this moment in history." And I was like, "Okay." And so I was like, "Just send me whatever link that I need to." And so we literally paused class and showed the students what was going on at the time frame. Because if it was Black Lives Matter movement, the question would have been, and the question that a lot of people asked was, where were the rubber bullets at? Where was any of those things while that happened? So
Yep. We all wondered the same thing because we've seen a lot of those groups being infiltrated as well. People that come not for the good of the group, but to cause insurrection and cause people to not understand what the Black Lives Movement was about. So it's a very interesting scenario. So one of the questions that comes to mind, you're young, just looking at you visually, you're young. Where do you see yourself in the scope of the world, not just America, but the world? So do you see yourself fully engaged by your country and by the world? Do you see yourself as a young Black man who has endless possibilities and potential to do anything, or do you see constraints sometimes from America and globally?
I definitely believe that I would love to believe that I'm just free to do whatever I want to do in the world or in America, but I definitely believe there are constraints. I believe that a lot of times, even when someone looks at your name and they realize that you are African American male or female, that's something that plays in mind. Do they want to hire you? And things along those lines. So I think that there are huge constraints for us still. I don't think that we are too far off from a lot of things that hold us back and suppress us. Even with voting, gerrymandering. So it's like so many things that keep us in where we're at, status quo. They're good where they're at.
Right.
And so those type of things. So I would love to say that, and it is crazy. I tell my kids, you can do whatever you want to be whatever you want to be. But I know honestly that there are constraints that keep us from being whatever we want to be or doing whatever we want to do.
How do we fix that?
That's an amazing question. I think that one thing that we have to do is we have to honestly work as a collective in order to change it. I think that whether you Black and brown, that you must come together as one to change what's going on in the country and in the world, because if we don't and we continue to be in our little pockets, nothing's really going to change, because we got a pocket over here that wants to change, pocket over here that wants to change. And then some of us are content and we may even be complacent at where we are because we've got here, we're going to be here. And so, hey, you get there, how you going to get there? So I think that we have to come together as a collective. I think that that's one thing. I think that's an amazing question that I really don't really know the whole answer to.
And I don't think any of us do, because if we did, we would have already addressed it. Yeah. But I think that one of the interesting pieces about what you just said is like, so, and I talk about this a lot, like, so most other groups in America, with the exception of the indigenous people, came here for a better life. We did not come here that way. We did not come seeking a better life. We were brought here, in many cases, against our will. If you look at our genealogy, you will find almost every race on the planet in our genes, in our DNA. So here we are now, in America, where, you could be killed for jogging through a neighborhood. You could be killed for a broken taillight. You could be killed for not, moving fast enough or whatever it is. And you have no control over your body. One of the things, I don't know if you saw the HBO special Between the World and Me. it's a powerful look. Like, do I own this body? Do I own myself? Do I own me? And I think when you break that apart, like, how do you answer that question? Do I own my body? Am I Rochelle Newton? I think so. I've been on this planet a long time, but I could walk out the door and be shot for simply moving, for walking, for going to the grocery store, for speeding. I'm over 5 miles of the speed limit, or I have a broken tail light. My license plate tag is expired and I could be no longer. So do I own my body? Do I own myself? Am I my own thing? And I'm asking you that now.
That's deep. Do I? I mean, once I would love to say yes, but as you stated, there's so many things that you can do that are so simple, as from jogging to just driving your car and looking suspicious, being in the wrong neighborhood in the evening time, and you
sometimes in the daylight.
True, very true. And you end up no longer here. So do we? The answer would love to be yes, but from the perspective, you will have to answer no.
Yeah, I remember. I'm sure you know who Muhammad Ali is. He used to make a big thing about his government name. Mm-hmm. And I remember growing up as a little girl. First time my mother said, "What's a government name?" So my mother had a 4th grade education, so she said, "What's a government name?" And I've been struggling with that in this time and space we are now, right? So what's a government name? So what were the names of my ancestors that came in that slave ship? So this is the name I've been assigned, and I have a social security number that's linked to this name. So do I own myself? Is there anything about me that's mine? So I can cut and braid my hair and do things to my hair. I can do things to my person. I can move in my house freely, but when I move outside of my space, it was very interesting that you said earlier about hiring, right? So you said about your name. So I mean, there's so many other pieces. Like if you went to a historically Black college, that could be a spot against you. If you grew up in a rural, predominantly Black neighborhood, that could be a spot against you. So, and I mean, so in this time and space, everybody's talking about diversity. Everybody's talking about it, but that's all they're doing is talking.
And that is so true.
Yeah.
That is so true. There's just the talks. And even in education, it is so funny how I hear so many things, and so many things from leaders that's like, oh, make sure that you bring diversity in your classroom. But what does that look like to you?
Exactly.
What do you mean bring diversity in my class? Are we just saying this? Or do we really want to bring diversity in our classrooms? Make sure that you it's Black History Month, decorate your door. Is that bringing diversity in my classroom for real though? Nope. Or it's Hispanic Heritage Month. Make sure that you have students to try a food. Is that bringing diversity into my classroom? That is scratching the surface and is not good at all.
Yep. And I think that we all feel that way. This past Juneteenth, a lot of organizations made a big deal about Juneteenth and taking a moment and breathing. We live with Juneteenth every day of our lives. We don't need a moment. We don't need to breathe that. What we do need to do is figure out how to belong to specifically in America, but I would even say the whole world, where we belong at, right? Where is it that we as Black and brown people belong? Because, we've now got these new terms, right, that we describe ourselves by, right? So, we are African Americans, or we are people of color and all these things. I mean, like, what does that exactly mean? Yes. What exactly does that mean? Because I am not a person of color. I'm Black because everybody on the planet is a person of color. So what does it mean, a person of color? I don't care who you are, you're a person of color, so, okay, I'm Black. I think last time I checked, I was Black. That's it. See, I'm Black. See what my shirt says, I'm Black.
Yes, and I agree with you. It is so funny how we have to group ourselves in these categories as African American. And I was filling out an application the other day, and it said, for my ethnicity or race. And so, of course, you got to click African American. And then after you click on African American, it was a drop down that wanted to know what type of African American you were. Were you Black? Or are you African American from Africa? I was like, whoa. And I screenshot it since I was like, I've never seen anything like this. Like, why must we go? What does that matter on this application for real to you? What does it give you out of that? So it's the grouping.
So a part of that is they're collecting data that they can feed to the federal government and other people to say that they have diversity hiring or they're doing the ELC thing, right? But in reality, it's tracking people. It's actually, pinning that label to you, right? So, okay, so you're African American of African descent. What? Okay, let's go there and explore that, but no, we can't. And so in this time of talking, people say, well, we're doing more talking because COVID, we're all at home, we're all on Zoom, we're looking at screens and stuff like that. But simply, if we really want to really be, and I won't even say diverse, because we're already diverse as a population, we're not diverse. I mean, I think the problem is that our actions have marginalized groups, specifically groups that have been disadvantaged since the very onset. If you take Native Americans, I mean, like, I don't know if you teach the Trail of Tears or you heard any of that in your class. I know you say you're a math teacher, but I mean, it's just really one of those things where every part of America had Native Americans in it. Every part, not just, the South or the North or Midwest, every part. And these people have been pushed off into islands of their own where they're only with their own kind. They have high prevalence of alcoholism. There's, educational issues because, how do you get that out of your DNA? How do you get that much pain out of your DNA? How do you scrape that DNA out of you of what's happened to me and my ancestors? And you take the reverse with Africans and African Americans. So here we are. How do we scrape slavery out of our DNA? How do we get that out of our persons of being? Someone said, a few years ago in a paper or two that was written, most Black people, most Indigenous people have PTSD, because that gene thing that has been done to your genes for 400 and 500 thousands of years, you can't just wipe it out. You can't, it's there.
I agree. It's very true. You can't, it happened and that's something that you can't wipe away, even though people try.
Oh, absolutely.
And they act like things didn't happen, or they act as if you should be over this by now.
Exactly.
So long ago. Why are you still worried about that? Why are you worried about your history? You should learn this history over here.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because we want to be politically correct. And I'm afraid I don't want to be politically correct. They want to be politically correct. They want to make sure they're in the margins. That's why we're having all these diversity chats. Because simply, if they wanted to fix this, it could be done just like that. They don't need these chats and all these meetings and all these things right there. If you want to fix diversity, go out and hire diverse people. And I don't mean people of color, but go out and have people have different ideas and thoughts from yours. Go out and hire people that are short, tall, fat, skinny, whatever it is. That's diversity. It's not sitting here talking, well, we need to get us a diversity program. We need to have a policy about diversity. We need to be more inclusive when we're hiring. All of these buzzwords what do they mean exactly? Because if you aren't doing it, stop saying it.
That is it too. They're buzzwords. They sound good and they draw you in. Right. And even for me, when they say, oh, I'm a social justice oriented educator, what does that mean to you?
Exactly.
What does social justice look like in your classroom?
Exactly.
I want to come watch so I can pick up some things, but I don't see anything different.
Right.
You're teaching the problem and you keeping it pushing. You haven't said anything that was social justice oriented or anything along those lines. So
yeah. And what's really interesting, going back to teaching a little bit, so one of the ways that we enforce racism is we take Black and brown children and in school suspension them or call them out for whatever it is that they have done. We make them feel like we're doing our end of year testing. You don't belong in this group, you belong in that group. All of the segmentation to the point that we are at, with our hands up in the air. Stop doing this. If you really want to defeat what you have done for thousands of years, then stop doing it. Just simply stop. It's like somebody who's an alcoholic or has an addiction problem, right? Stop. And they have all these tools to help you stop drinking, stop smoking, stop being on drugs. Develop some tools to help people stop being racist. That's what you need to do. Come up with a pill for that. Let's get an injection for that. How do we get that fixed in our society?
I'm with you on that. And one thing that I would like to add to that is, let's not forget about our special education babies.
Absolutely.
We Black and brown kids go in special education or you're bad. You need special education. We need a behavior plan. So we're gonna put you in special education.
Right.
Maybe we should ask, what's wrong with you? What's
Exactly.
going on? Is there an issue? Let's talk to you and see why you're acting like that. Rather than the first step is, yup, you need to build, you need to go in special education, you need a behavior intervention plan.
Yep. And you see racism like that everywhere, right? So what's the crime and punishment of crack versus meth, right? So you think about that. What's the term for crack versus meth? So those were addicts. The people who are on meth are, you know, they have mental health issues. They have health. This is a health problem. This is not crack, you know. So, and then even that narrative, even the crack narrative, as it's told, it was a poor black people problem, and that was not the case. You know, that's not the case. But you know, we like that segmentation, right? I want to put you over here in this little category over here and this here, and we feel better about ourselves because we've done that segmentation.
That is crazy. That is really crazy how we just group things, and that is so true. How crack versus meth, or whether it's a powder or a rock, like where is, but you know who uses what, so we need to give them more time. Then,
right. I mean, it's just a society we have. Demarcus, thank you so much for chatting with me today. We have about 5 minutes. I'm going to leave that time to you for anything we didn't cover, anything you wish to say that we didn't talk about, or anything else.
So I honestly thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and actually learn from you. I love to have the conversation. One thing I would like to say is that, especially for me, first year teacher in education, one thing that I believe that we need to do is, I need to, wherever we are, no matter who we're teaching, we need to bring their lived experiences to the classroom. We can move from the outskirts of the city, or you can move from the outskirts of the city because I grew up in the city, or you can move from the outskirts of the city to inner city where schools pay more money and that's where you want to be at. But can you make those connections with those students? Because I think that that's the first thing that you must do in K-12 is make connections with your students. And if you have those connections with your students, you can get them to do just about anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're glad you are a teacher. We're glad you're in that space because we need as many of you as you can. I don't know if you've listened to any of my chats, but my husband is a 3rd grade teacher.
Okay.
And it's an amazing thing to see him move through his space. He's been teaching for a long, long time, 25 or so years. He's been teaching a long time, but it's so amazing to see him move through the spaces because the kids truly connect to him. I mean, like, that's the place where you do not see racism so overtly, right? Because kids have to learn racism. It's not natural. It's not inherent to us. You know, we are not racist by nature. We learn that behaviors as we get older, right? We learn that our culture, nice shirt, our culture matters more than your culture, or this culture is this and this culture is that. You know, when we were talking about running through neighborhoods, if you live in a middle class or upper middle class neighborhood, you're seen differently than if you live in a poverty-stricken neighborhood. And that's just unfortunate that that's the society that we're in. But I am glad that you are there, and I hope you, whatever course you go, that you continue to speak your truth and tell your story, because they need to be heard. These stories need to be heard, and people need to listen carefully to what people are saying to them, because they're not couching it for, you know, acceptance or, you know, being you know, politically correct. They're expressing their life and what they're experiencing every day, and we need to bring attention to that as opposed to bringing nice words to it and putting on a coat of paint. What's that, lipstick on a pig, people say? That's what diversity is, lipstick on a pig.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate this very much. As soon as the video converts, I'll send you a link. Please look at it and let me know if I may upload it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear. Stay safe.
You too.